I am Araceli. Some people call me Selly. I just graduated film school this past December, so that was about a month ago. And I'm here with Jeff Deverett today, and I'm going to be asking him some questions that will help me out throughout my, postgraduate film journey. So, who are you, Jeff? What do you do?
I'm Jeff Deverett, and I am a filmmaker. I am a film professor at San Diego State University. I'm a film consultant, and I have a law background and a business degree. So I know a lot about the indie film business.
Awesome. So, kind of to set the interview up, so I'm just going to be asking you a couple of questions about what to do as a newly graduated film student, because I feel like a lot of film students kind of get lost post-graduation. So any clarity that you can bring on that. So that brings me to my first question is, what is a way that I can kind of navigate the industry post-graduation?
Okay, great question. Depends, when you say the industry, what part of the industry you want to navigate. I mean, there's basically two tracks. There's production and distribution. So production is obviously making movies and content, or TV shows, whatever, and distribution is selling them. Most film students want to do production. That's the fun, sexy part of filmmaking. And if you can get a job in that part of the industry, that would be great. If you go to, say, a big studio in Hollywood or something like that, you're going to end up, sort of a small fish in a big sea. That'll get you a lot of experience. Or you can try to do it yourself, which is indie filmmaking, and produce, direct, write your own films. But that'll involve financing them, and that'll involve the whole gambit of the film business. Or you can go distribution, which, as you know, I teach, and distribution is all about selling films worldwide. So it's probably what you didn't go to film school for. You probably went for making them. But if you learn the back end of the business, which is the distribution side, you learn how to sell them, that will really prepare you to put you in a better place to be able to make them. Because if you can sell what you make, you'll be very successful financially and artistically. So distribution is, it's all business, it's all sales and marketing and that type of thing. But you are dealing with film and TV content, so it's fun, but it's not the sexy part of production.
So would you say, since I've just graduated, the best route to take for success long term as a filmmaker would be to go through the distribution route?
If you want to ultimately be an independent producer, meaning that you have the freedom to choose what projects you want to make and tell the stories the way you want to make them, so you're not beholden to anybody, that's true indie producing. If that's your goal, you're going to need to learn how distribution works. If your goal is just to be part of a team, say be an AD or director or something on set, then you'll never need to know about distribution because other people will do it for you. But if you want to be in the indie world and choose your own projects and have that freedom, you should start with distribution so you understand. Because understanding what sells helps you choose what to make.
Awesome. That's a great response. So would you say, because I know a lot of a fellow film students or people that have graduated recently, they're all looking for studio jobs. Do you know how realistic it is for film students to get into those studio jobs, or I know others who are just working freelance? So
yeah.
What would your response
the studio system is tricky to get into. Primarily, if we're talking Hollywood studios, which what we're probably talking about in Los Angeles. I mean, there are obviously studios elsewhere. Georgia's got a lot of studios and stuff, but let's talk Hollywood studios, which is LA. Generally, the three big feeder schools for Los Angeles are Chapman, USC, and UCLA. And those programs are designed, I think, to teach people how to be on-set studio people. Whereas a lot of the other film schools, like San Diego State, is more focused on independent filmmaking, teaching you how to navigate the world independently. So, but if you're aimed for a studio job, then you got to kind of pick the discipline that you really want to be good at and be really good at it. Like, let's say you want to be, a production designer or a sound person or lighting and gaffer grip, whatever you choose, just be really, really good at it. And then ultimately that will be your ticket to get a studio job or on a big Hollywood set. But hopefully you're going to be happy with that, because Sometimes you want to grow and develop into, say, being writer director. So sometimes that path is limiting because you're really good gaffer, but it doesn't have a direct line to writing and producing and directing.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
And by the way, getting into the studio system, often it's who you know. So there's lots and lots of great people who graduate from film school and have great skills, but sometimes, like lots of other industries, it's who you know. If you're connected, if you have a relative or a friend or somebody who's in the system, they can kind of get your resume to the top of the pile.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I feel like all the sets that I have been able to work on have all been just friends of friends, or me asking around, being like, hey, do you guys need any help or anything?
Right.
So that makes complete sense. As far as being in film school, what do you think is the most important takeaway? Because I know that not every film school teaches the same thing or has the same values or has the same kind of equipment that you can learn from. So what is the most important takeaway you feel students should come out of film school with to go down that independent filmmaking route?
Okay, to go down the independent route. All right, in no particular order, these are probably all equal, okay? Number one is you just have to grow as a person. You got to mature. That's what university's for. It's a time to learn how to, say, collaborate with others, some leadership skills, some thought skills, just processing, the world, all right? So maturity and being responsible and knowing how to keep a job and show up for work and do your best, all right? So that's just growing up, all right? But that's a time during film school, all of university, to actually do that. All right, now, you need skills. Like, if you're going to work in film, you need to have film skills. So that would be camera, lighting, grip, sound, whatever your skills are. The more you know and the better you are at it, the better chance you're going to have, all right? But then you probably need, if you want to be an indie filmmaker, you need leadership skills. So you need confidence, you need the ability to direct people, to collaborate with other people, because there's a lot of moving parts and you don't have a lot of help, and you also have to know how to problem solve. So now a lot of this comes with experience, not teaching in the academic world. It's just really about doing. So film school will teach you the skills, and then you just have to go and, what I say is, apply them in the school of hard knocks, which is working and just making a few mistakes, learning from it and growing from it, and learning not to do that the next time. So it's a combination of academic knowledge and skills and then applying them and learning beyond that.
So if I take all of those skills from film school, and let's say, my senior year, I wrote a feature film script, or I wrote like 3/4 of it. Let's say I finished my feature film script and I really am really passionate about it after graduation. I'm like, I need to make this movie. Should I like wait a couple years before I try and make it? Like, if I want to make this feature right out of school, what would you recommend me do with my script, and how do I get funding for it, or how can I make this script turn into a film?
Okay, great question. The key question, okay? Because I would say the holy grail of being a film student and being a filmmaker is making a feature film. To me, that is like the goal of all filmmakers, is to make your own feature film. All right, and then you can go on and do series and all kinds of stuff, but a feature is like really special. So here's the thing. A lot of indie filmmakers, first of all, won't even get the opportunity to make a feature film because it's going to be too difficult to finance it. And they don't teach this in film school, unfortunately. They don't teach enough about financing, because getting the money to make a feature film is actually harder than making the film itself. It's a much more complicated process. And then afterwards, selling the film is actually more complicated than making the film. So, the way I teach it in film school is like, here's a feature film, all right? Here's finance, here's distribution, and here's production. And I don't want to belittle production because it's very hard to produce and there's a lot that goes into it. But getting money and selling is really, really tricky. So you're going to have to learn that. You're going to have to navigate that if you want to do it. All right? Now, the question is, should you go, and you said, should I make my feature film right out of film school? So the answer is, if you figure you're mature enough and responsible enough and capable enough to do it, then yeah, why wait? Now, the big question is, should you make your dream film first? Like everybody's got this sort of dream film that they really want to do. Should that be your first one? Or should you do something else to practice so that you can make all the mistakes the first time around, and then the second time you'll have learned from it? And you're going to make mistakes the first time around. It's inevitable, all right? Because your first time, it's in anything, you're going to always make mistakes. So people say, should I do what I really want to do the first time? Because I'll make mistakes and it won't be as good as I can do. And I say it would be better if you could do it the second one. Make your dream film the second film, not the first film. The only problem is you might only get one opportunity to make a movie. Like you might only be able to get financed once, because if your first film fails, people might not trust you the second time around. So you might only get that shot once. So for me, I would say make the first one the one you want to really be, in case you never get another shot. Now, hopefully you do get another shot. And if you don't like the way you made the first one and you get another shot, remake it. Just make it better.
Got it. So would you say that I would make my dream feature my first film or make it my second film?
I would say it's better if you made it your second film, but if you don't get a second shot to make another film, then make it your first film. So on the balance, I would say make it your first film. Just go for it. Make it your first film. And, the way to avoid making costly amateur errors on your first film is just surround yourself with experienced filmmakers. Okay, don't make it with all students who haven't made those mistakes yet. So bring in, maybe even a co-director if you want to direct, so that they can help guide you so that you don't make these errors. Bring in an experienced line producer. Bring in people who already have the experience, so that you don't have to make those errors.
Mm-hmm. And then where would I go about funding for that? Like, I know in the past you've mentioned high net worth individuals, but let's keep in mind, I just graduated college. I only know other people who are in college and definitely don't have a lot of funds. So where can I go about finding these high net worth individuals as a college student, or, I'm in my early 20s, mid 20s, for early, filmmakers? So I feel like I know a lot of very talented people who could make, an amazing feature film, but I don't know how to, I feel like I have to wait until I'm like 30 or 40 for everyone in my, network circle to, have those high net worth
Perhaps. So there's a lot of questions in that question.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the gambit of the whole film industry, all right? So number one is you're talking about finance. Like, where do you get the money? So before we talk about that, I would say, like, what level of film would you want to make the first time out? So I would say don't choose something that's overly expensive and overly ambitious. Do not do a heavy-duty special effects sci-fi feature, because you won't be able to afford it to do it the way you really want to do it. Do something that's more manageable. Like, keep the explosions and the gunshots and the car chases and all that kind of stuff to a minimum if you can on your first feature film, because all of that stuff costs money. So hopefully you'll choose the right project that you can do at a reasonable budget level with the resources that you and your friends have. And if you're good filmmakers, you'll be able to do a really good film, as long as you don't try to be overly ambitious. A lot of it is about good acting and a lot of planning and good writing. But if you go heavy-duty special effects and that type of thing, that's going to be more expensive, and you're probably not going to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing is just choose the right project to do out of the gate that you can afford. All right?
And then just one thing, what would you, because you mentioned, do like a reasonable film. What would you consider to be like reasonable budget-wise or reasonable script-wise?
Okay, bottom line is, if you're going to be successful in the film industry, you have to make good films. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So you got to choose kind of a film that you think the audience is going to receive well and enjoy. And you got to make it well. It's got to be acted well and everything like that. So if you're going to just mess around and not make good films, then you'll have some fun. It'll be a hobby, but you're not going to be a career filmmaker. So number one, you got to make good films. All right? Number two, I would say choose the films that you feel the audience are going to enjoy the most. It's not necessarily about you, not yet. When you're Tarantino or something like that, you could choose whatever you want to do. But getting started, choose what you think the audience will be the most entertained by. All right? So, but also in that context, choose what you can afford to make well. So it's probably going to be some drama, maybe a comedy, It's not going to be an action thriller because that's going to involve too many special effects. You're competing against big budget Hollywood films that are going to be able to outdo you. So choose something that you could write well and that can be acted well with as few characters as possible so that you keep the cast low and your expenses low, as few locations as possible, or whatever you have access to. So picking the project's important. Keep that in mind of how much you're going to have to spend to make a good one. So if your pet project, the one that your dream project happens to be some big epic sci-fi period piece thriller, something like that, choose a different one the first time out. If not, if it's reasonable, then that's great, and just contain it. Don't contain it too much because it has to look good. And remember, it has to be entertaining. So at the end of the day, it's not good enough to say, well, I didn't have enough money, so that's why the film doesn't look good, because the audience doesn't care. You just have to say, wow, I did a good job. And filmmakers can do that. Skilled filmmakers can make a little money go a long way. And hopefully you can do that. Mm-hmm. Okay, but you're still going to need some money. So you ask me, where to get the money?
Yeah.
Okay, so the money is, like I said, here's the financing. It's not easy to get the money. I teach a course on that, as you know, but you can do some crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is really tough to do to fund a feature. So most of your money is going to come from private investors, which are what you called high net worth individuals, people who have money, who believe in you, who want to support you and your dream, and hopefully will make a return on their investment. So where do you find them if you don't know anybody? You got to network. I mean, that's half the battle. Like, you got to go and ask people, do you know somebody that I could talk to, that I can share my dream with, who will give me the time of day? And you have to have a plan. I said, it's not easy. To me, that is way harder than making the film. Every filmmaker thinks, oh, the film is so hard. I said, no. Getting the money is hard. Remember, when you're making a film, you're spending the money. Raising the money is the challenge. Mm-hmm. So there's lots and lots of things, networking and presentations and business stuff that you have to put together, revenue forecasts, all this kind of stuff to demonstrate to an investor, a high net worth individual, that you're a good bet for them to take financially and that they like you and believe that you have the skills and the credibility to deliver a good film.
Mm-hmm. I'm just envisioning myself perusing downtown, looking for people.
This is not about that. This is you ask friends of friends, friends of your parents. None of them are in those circles, but mm-hmm. you ask your doctor, your dentist, that's the classic cliche thing. You'll know people who know other people who have money. These aren't going to be your immediate circle of friends. These are going to be outside. So you're mm-hmm. going to have to be friendly and cordial and polite and ask them for help. You're going to say, look, it's my first time around. I'm brand new. I'm a good filmmaker. I have a great team, but it's tricky to get the money. And here's what I pitch to you. And then you got to learn how to do a proper investor pitch. Mm-hmm. That's the secret, because they need to hear exactly. You've got to do it properly. You've got to sell yourself. You've got to sell your skill set, your credibility. You've got to sell the investment, the return on investment. And notice I haven't even talked about the film, because mm-hmm. the film comes last. Okay, it's most high net worth individuals, what we call angel investors, who are going to invest in you, are going to invest in you, not your movie. They're going to invest because they think you are going to be a talented filmmaker, and they're going to give you a shot. That's what you're selling. So networking isn't easy. We could talk for hours on networking, but it's not going to be walking downtown or walking into. There are techniques, by the way, when you sit, you joked and you said, "What, I'm going to walk downtown and see somebody gets out of a fancy car and go up to them." Mm-hmm. People do that, but that's not the best way to do it. But what people do, as crazy as it sounds, is they'll get a job at a very expensive restaurant. Like either as a waiter or a hostess, right? And it's very, very indirect, hit and miss. But as a hostess, you get to chit chat with the patrons, and they come in, and at some point you slip in that you're a filmmaker and you're looking to make your first feature, and do they know anybody who could help you? And mm-hmm. you see, then once in a while you get lucky and somebody is kind and says, hey, come and see me, or something like that, or working at a country club, or working at a place where high net worth individuals hang out. But it's not like knock knock, hey, I'm Sally and I want to show you a movie. It's they got to get to know you and like you. So it takes a while.
Yeah.
And that's like the super cold calling way to do it. You know, the better way is through other friends and family if you have that.
Yeah. Yeah. Got it. I heard like a story a while ago about this guy who like got this gym membership. It was like $500 a month, but he would go and make friends there, and then he ended up climbing the ranks, like business professionally, because he was just surrounding himself.
Correct. That happens at country
people.
clubs all the time, like golf and country clubs. That's one of the reasons that they exist, so that people can network with each other, and meet those people who are in those circles. Mm-hmm. And yeah, a lot of real estate people do that. They join a country club that they can't afford, because or people in the banking, in the financial services industry, they can't really afford it, but that's the clientele they want. So it's a business investment for them to hobnob with those people.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. And then just to kind of close everything off, so you've just given all this wonderful advice, but my question for you is, you're a film professor, you do kind of consulting to other filmmakers. Why should I trust you as a postgraduate? Like, you've been my professor before, you give advice to other filmmakers, but do you have anything to show for your success, or why should I trust Jeff?
Okay, what makes me credible?
Yes, what makes
to
you
give
credible?
you advice?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's a great question. Fair question. All right, first of all, I have a law degree and a business degree, so I understand, and the law degree is in intellectual property, so I understand copyright, I understand licensing, I understand all those components of sort of the business side of the industry. All right, secondly, I have made 7 feature films, all right, 3 of which I wrote and directed. I've produced them, I've raised the money for them. So what I'm talking about, I've done myself. I have walked the walk. I don't just talk the talk, I actually do it. People, filmmakers say to me, oh, you don't know how hard it is. And I say, no. What you're about to do, I've done 7 times already. I totally know how hard it is. I know how much rejection you're going to get. I have been rejected more times than you could ever imagine. By the way, with rejection, I use the expression, no means not today. It means don't get depressed. It means you got a no today, but you'll get maybe a yes tomorrow. All right? So I've been down those roads myself. I've been in front of hundreds of potential investors. I've networked. I've done everything that I just told you have to do. And it didn't come easy, but after a while, it gets easier the more you do it. Okay, so I have 7 feature films that I've made. And all of them have been, I've learned all along the way and struggled, and I can't say struggle because later on they got easier because you learn from your mistakes. Okay, I am a professor at San Diego State University. I teach film finance, distribution, and marketing. So I've written all the syllabuses and all the course materials and everything like that. I've studied it. I've done, and then career-wise, I spent 24 years of my career in distribution before I became a creative. So I have been at hundreds of film markets, hundreds of film festivals. I've bought and sold hundreds of indie films. So I understand the distribution part of the business implicitly from doing it for most of my career. Mm-hmm. And now, in addition to teaching, I also do consulting for indie filmmakers. So I speak to literally every year hundreds of indie filmmakers. They're my clients. And I advise them on everything from which project to choose, how to get distribution, how to market, how to finance. I don't get involved in the making of their films. That's their thing. I just help guide them in everything else. So I do have a lot of experience in the indie film world where I focused most of my attention. I did work in the studio system for a while, and in the theatrical distribution side for a while, so I understand that as well. But now I really just focus on streaming distribution of indie films.
Perfect.
Is that enough, or do we want more?
Well, just to kind of...
Okay, plus, hold on. There's one other thing, actually, that's likely the most important thing that I really should mention. As much as this is going to sound corny, mm-hmm. I'm probably the most honest guy you'll ever meet in the film industry, because I tell it like it is. Mm-hmm. You know what? I don't pull any punches. I don't pretend to be some big Hollywood mogul or anything like that. So I'm honest. That's, I think, why you should trust me the most, is because I will tell you the truth.
Mm-hmm. And I do trust you, Jeff, but my only question is that you mentioned that you have been a part of the distribution and kind of you were part of the studio system for 20 years, correct?
24, yeah.
24 years. How does what was happening 24 years ago compare to today?
Okay, well, first of all, the reason I got into distribution, like,
Mm-hmm.
I went to law school with the intention of being a film producer, all right? And when I put my resume out to work in a big company in the production department, and there weren't any jobs in production, but they offered me a job in distribution because I had a law degree. And I said, well, I didn't even know what distribution was at the time, to be honest with you. But I took the job thinking that after a while I could prove myself and then transition into the production department, say after a year or so. That year ended up being 24 years. I mean, I left several companies, started my own company, so it was a whole journey. And I enjoyed distribution, and I did really well at it. And I did financially well at it, and it was a good learning curve. Sorry, you said how does that lead me to today as opposed to...
Like, how does that relate? Because I feel like the film industry, just even like streaming or viewing films, kind of, it changes almost every 5 years or so. Yeah,
right.
So how does that, from what you experienced and learned 20 years ago compared to today, is that still relevant today?
Oh yeah, well, the relevancy is that you have to sell what you make. That's always going to be the relevancy. So, when I first started out, I don't want to date myself too much, but the big market was video, was like VHS video, which ultimately became DVD video. That's where we were making most of our money. Now, of course, that doesn't exist today. So now it's streaming. But it's the exact same process. I mean, you're making content for an audience. You got to figure out where to channel it through to that, like the distribution channels. It happens to be, say, the video on demand streaming companies now, like Netflix or whatever, Pluto, Tubi, whatever, as opposed to Blockbuster Video and Hollywood Video, what it was back then. But that's the distribution channel. But the process of creating awareness with audiences, which is marketing, so you still have to tell the audiences, hey, we made this great film, you can see it here on Netflix as opposed to in Blockbuster Video. It does just a different narrative. So it's all relevant still. It's all the exact same process. It's just different channels of distribution, but it's still creating content for an audience and explaining and marketing to that audience to entice them to want to watch your film. Mm-hmm. Now, look, there's social media now. Back then there wasn't. We were doing it was paid advertising, newspapers, bus shelters, TV. There wasn't an internet. There was no internet. There was no social media. So now it's different. Now we use different techniques, but it's still the same process. Still the same goal is just connect with the audience and entice them to watch your movie, and just send them to where you want to watch them.
Got it. So it's pretty much the same process, but just relating it to different platforms.
Yeah.
Or revenue.
You're sending them to different distribution channels. Mm-hmm. Okay. Instead of saying to my audience, go to Blockbuster Video to rent my movie, which is what we said 30 years ago. Now we're saying, go to Tubi to watch my movie. It's streaming there. Mm-hmm. Or go to whatever streaming platform. But we're still reaching out to audiences instead of reaching out to them by, say, television commercials, which is still relevant today. We're going through social media. We're connecting with them that way, and other ways of doing it. So as much as a dinosaur as I may seem to be, I've evolved. I've evolved with the time.
Got it. Well, thank you. Thank you for kind of explaining all that. That kind of helps a lot, especially I feel like I have my whole future ahead of me as a filmmaker, and it's definitely kind of scary seeing how rapidly everything's evolving with like streaming, and there's not really video rentals anymore. It's all online. Mm-hmm. So,
well, in some ways that's really good because now you have the ability to connect with the entire world. Mm-hmm. And so that's an opportunity. It's hard to connect to the entire world because it's a crowded space, and people are distracted with a lot of different things from everybody trying to connect. But the good news is you can connect worldwide. So if your message is good and your content is good, then you have the opportunity to do that. We couldn't do that back then. We could just sort of connect locally. Like a big release would be either, would be Blockbuster and then Walmart. But that was all, say, United States based, and then maybe it would go internationally. But it's easier to do it now. It's just more crowded.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, listen, the business is more than just the production. The business is like every business. This is no different than any other business. Like if you said, I want to open a restaurant, I would say, okay, number one, make sure your food is good, which is kind of like saying, make sure your movies are good. Okay. In the restaurant business, I say, now let's look at the business stuff. Make sure you have a good location. Make sure you have good service. Make sure your pricing is, in line with what that local community will be able to embrace and enjoy. And, make sure you just run a good operation. And then do marketing to tell the local community that you just opened a brand new restaurant. It's the exact same process with the film. You just happen to make a good film, then tell your audience that you made a good film, send them to where you want them to see it, and tell them how much you want to pay for it. It's just business. But film school doesn't really teach the business side, and a lot of filmmakers say to me, I'm an artist, I'm not a business person.
Mm-hmm.
I signed up to make stuff, I didn't sign up to sell it. And I say, I get that. If you don't want to sell it, associate yourself with somebody who does, because what you make has to be sold in order for you to continue to make it. So even though you might not want to do the business side of the business, find somebody who does.
Mm-hmm.
Find a business school student who wants to work with you and hold your hand through that part of the process so that you can be the artist. And by the way, if I love the art side of the business. I mean, if I could do nothing else for the rest of my life but write and direct movies, don't think I wouldn't do that. I would be a super luxury, because who doesn't love to be creative as a filmmaker? But unfortunately, everything else has to happen, and it doesn't happen by itself. You have to make it happen.
Mm-hmm. I will definitely
but
take
good luck
all this
to you.
advice.
Good luck to you. You're on the right
my
path.
future. Thank you. Thank you. Is there anything else that you'd like to add to kind of close everything out?
It's been an interesting conversation.
I think we kind of went all over the place.
Yeah, no, but that's part of it.
Yeah.
That's part of it. Look, here's what I'd like to add. If you're going to be an independent filmmaker, you're going to be an entrepreneur in business. You're going to go it alone. And being an entrepreneur is not easy. It's lonely, it's challenging, it's frustrating, a lot of rejection. But the reason people do it is because they want to just control their destiny. They want to be who they want to be. In the film business, they want to choose their projects. They want to tell their stories. They don't want to be telling other people's stories. And they want to tell them the way they want to tell them. So it's a control thing and a freedom thing. Plus, if you're successful as an entrepreneur, you can make a heck of a lot more money, because it's kind of risk return. You've taken a heck of a lot more risk with your time and your finances and your resources. And if it's successful, you reap the benefits because you get a lot more of the return. So that would be the other reason why people, do the entrepreneurial thing. But it's not easy. It is not for the faint of heart, especially the film business, because it's super, super competitive. And remember what you're competing against. You're competing against all of the streaming companies and the Hollywood studios that are making gigantic A-list, big budget product. And that's 95% of what people want to watch is that. So you're probably dealing in just 5% of the market share, because everybody wants the big stuff. But 5% is pretty good if you know how to navigate it. And then hopefully, once you're good at it, that 5% lets you compete in the 95%. So that's what's ahead of you. And just make sure you understand that. And then when the challenges come and the rejection and all this kind of stuff, you're prepared for it mentally. Like people say, it's how do you take so many no's? Like how do you get so many doors slammed in your face and you keep going? It's because I expect it. That's how. Like I just expect, I used to say to my staff, expect to get 100 no's before you get a yes. I don't even say that anymore. Now I say expect to get like 200 or 300 no's, because that's the way the world has gone. But it's okay. If you're expecting it, that's part of the process, and that way you're not demoralized by it. And if you get lucky and you get the no in the first, 5 or 10, consider it very fortunate. But if you don't, consider it the norm.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go in with that attitude, you have a good chance of being successful.
Got it. So just never stop asking or knocking or...
Until you're done. When there comes a point where people just get exhausted from the process. They say, what was I thinking? This is crazy. It's not what I signed up for. It's not what I envisioned. And then you move on.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't do that until you've tried. Because if you do it before you try, I mean, if you give up before you've really, really tried, you'll wonder the rest of your life if you could have done it.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, that's the case with everything, okay? Let's say you said to me, I want to be an actress. I would say, put yourself out there. Give yourself a timeline, 3, 4, 5 years, whatever you can afford to do to give yourself a real shot. Let's say you want to be an athlete. You know, like I have some of the golfers from SDSU in my class, and they all want to be professional golfers. The odds are extremely low that they're going to, but I say, like, give it your best shot. Because when you're 40 or 50 years old, you don't want to ever have to wonder, what if I would have? So just give it your best shot now when you're young and try your best. And if it doesn't work, then go on to something else. You can always come back to it later on. You know, like there are lots of filmmakers who tried out of film school, failed, moved on to some other career, and then in their 40s said, hey, I'm going to try my film again because now I have money, I've got experience, I'm more mature, I'm going to relive that dream now. So you never know. Life's crazy, and just never say no. But don't get too obsessed with it.
Yeah.
Okay? Like, don't ruin your life with this obsession that you got to keep going and going and going. At some point, the universe sends you messages and they say, hey, Sally, you gave it a shot. Well done. Now move on. You can always have that dream in the back of your head. You can never, the light doesn't have to go out. The flame doesn't have to burn out. And then if and when you get an opportunity later on, then you can reignite it.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Well, thanks for being here. Yeah.
I hope it wasn't too demoralizing or depressing.
No, it wasn't depressing at all.
Okay, good.
No, it wasn't.
I just want it to be realistic. That's my thing. I just want you to know what is real so that at least you're prepared to deal with it.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Okay. Boom.
What?